Hi there, and welcome to Lorena's Labyrinth and joining me today. If you're a returning visitor, once again, and as always, thank you for being part of my journey. If you're new to the channel, I hope you find the content of value and that you choose to stick around for a while. I've got a number of playlists on the channel these days, and on a Sunday, this is for the newbies, I do put up a chitter chat of what we call in Australia a bit of a yarning, have a yap type video. Anyway, as you will have gathered, today's video is on Amazonite. And Amazonite is one of my favourite crystals. It's got such a beautiful calming energy about it, and the colours are really stunning as well. So Amazonite is going to be the first specific, if you like, crystal specific video that I'm putting on the Crystal Magic playlist, and we're going to be looking at it in depth just to give people a little bit of information based on my own experience of handling and selling crystals as well, retailing them, which I've done in the past, but not just some information on how to use the crystals and how to be buyer aware, I guess. Just, I suppose, having realistic expectations about crystals as well. Now, of course, it would be remiss of me to not bring to your attention that disclaimer that I've got there, because when we talk about anything metaphysical, we don't have any scientific evidence to back it up. It should not be replacing your health treatment programs. If you're purchasing crystals for healing benefits, such as healing of the mind and body, and even your emotions, you can't, actually I shouldn't say you can't, you would be very ill-advised to stop engaging with your treating practitioners, but you can with ease use your crystals in conjunction with those treating programs. I don't believe there's any contraindications at all as I stumble over my word. Anyway, just a reminder that whenever I put up my videos, I also put up chapters and timing, so you can skip to any specific part of the video. You can jump ahead with ease. If you want to return to the videos later on, of course, if there's something you think, Anna had something on that video that interests me and it was on the Amazonite, you can go back, you can have a look at the chapter and the timings and just skip straight ahead. But anyway, without any further ado, let's get into it. So I guess the first thing about any crystal, and this includes Amazonite, is when we go into a retail shop or whatever, most people are different, but as far as they might want to handle the crystals first. But for most of us, we'll actually scan the shop, and we will be drawn to a colour based on, or a crystal based on its colour. And this is one of the things about Amazonite. It's got a beautiful bluey green colour about it. And if you look closely at these images here, you'll see that one's slightly more blue than the other. They're still blues, but they're bluey green. They've got a bit of an ocean colour to them. The other thing is that, there is a range of hues. I want to put this out there, and it definitely has the white streaks and veins through it, as we see here. But you will see, obviously, that image on the right-hand side has got some very obvious, I call them striations. That might not be the right word, but certainly white veins. The image on the left tends to look a little bit more blurred, but these are still, just so that you know, both of these images here are actually very good quality Amazonite. These might even be what you call the perfect specimens. So you can see with the perfect specimens, you're even going to have a certain amount of variety there. Now, when we talk about Amazonite as well, and any crystal, I'm just putting this out there, there's also that tactile part of it. What does it feel like when it's in your hand? Forget about the energy and the sensory stuff at this point in time. We're looking purely at the physical state of the Amazonite. And when we hold it in our hand in its natural state, it generally has a bit of a soapy type texture, if you would call it that. It's hard, but not too hard. So, soap would actually be too soft, but it's got a fairly smooth texture to it. Although, as you see, the image on the right looks a little bit rough, but that would be, to put this into perspective, if I was looking at one in the shops, or both of these in the shop, the thing is there's two parts to this. obviously, when we're looking at a picture, and this is the same with any form of online buying, you're looking at an image, so you're using your imagination a little bit, which is what I'm doing here. So I would envisage, if I was to pick up the crystal on the left, that is what we call, oh my gosh, I'm having a mind blank. I've written it down somewhere. I've said it that many times. Prisms, I guess. You know what I mean? Because they're almost points. You can see that you've got the angles at the top, and I'm talking about the image on the left-hand side. You've got angles. It's almost a point, but rarely do you actually buy. In fact, I've never bought Amazonite of this shape. I have tended to buy Amazonite in the polished version, like on the thumbnail of this. But going back to this image here, the one on the right probably is part of one of those prism type towers that we've got on the left, but it's been broken because you can see there's that fracture, if you like, rough end, and we will be talking about fractures in Amazonite as we go further into the video. But anyway, just to come back to this is what we would call high quality, high grade Amazonite, and it's very rare that you will be able to actually buy this on the market, and probably if you did, you would be paying a fortune for it. Now, I must say, as I do my preparations for these videos, I see so much conflicting information out there. So the bottom line is, use your discretion. Always use your discretion. They will always, sellers and retailers will always turn around and say this particular crystal is really good for such and such a zodiac sign, or it's the birthstone of a particular zodiac sign or whatever. Now, the reality is, somebody somewhere once upon a time must have decided that these crystals, the properties of it, are compatible with a specific star sign. So, as I say, use your discretion, because particularly with Amazonite, I've seen it linked with many star signs and not many at all, depending on which site you're going to. But I would say, hazarding a guess, it probably is realistically most suitable towards the star signs, the fire signs, because of its calming and peaceful associations. It's a very calming, peaceful crystal. So with that, we're talking about the Leo, the Aries, and the Sag. And part of this might be, I guess, the reason why I'm going in that direction is because fire signs, I'm a cusp. I've just got to throw that out there. I'm a cusp. So when it comes to a fire sign, I should clarify, I am a cusp of fire and air, excuse me as I swallow. So when it comes to the fire signs, we can be very blunt with our speech. We can at times be quite unfiltered, and we can actually be misinterpreted quite easily, where people perceive that the way we speak and what we're saying is aggressive. Okay. Now, this is why I say I actually think that it's probably quite suited to us, because not only is it a peaceful crystal in as far as it calms and it soothes if people are a bit on the fiery side, it also is a communication enhancer. And so that's going to be beneficial for people that are blunt and tactless with the way that they speak. But anybody can gain benefit from Amazonite, or any crystal actually, if they're looking at the properties of it. And once again, I say, look, if you were in a retail shop and you were looking at crystals, you would go to the one that you feel drawn to. So, from a general metaphysical overview of the properties of Amazonite, we're looking at a crystal that is actually referred to as the stone of hope. As I mentioned before, or alluded to, it's very good for enhancing communication, because it's a calming, peaceful, soothing type crystal. It also is very beneficial if there's any conflicts that need to be resolved. So if you're basically in a situation where there's a lot of arguments happening, a lot of harsh words, then it would be really advisable to perhaps carry or wear some Amazonite. If you are the type of person that lives with a lot of emotional turmoil, you could use Amazonite as part of stabilizing your emotions. So if we were to look at that, we will be further on down the track, but an idea of where you might find it beneficial, or somebody might find it beneficial, would be those people that have got bipolar type disorders or emotional dysregulation type disorders. It has protective aspects to it. As I said, it's a stone of hope, so it's believed to carry good luck and prosperity with it, and it's also believed to enhance celestial communication. And when we say celestial communication, we're talking about the higher beings, the higher realms, and the angels, and even the earth elementals. Now, just going back to the business of prosperity for a moment, it's believed to attract people or customers. If you've got a new business going, it's said to bring new customers in and new opportunities. And as far as the celestial communication is concerned, it's considered to enhance the capacity of bringing in the light, I guess. What else can I add to this? Just that the reason, or one of the reasons it's called the Stone of Hope, is it's believed to inspire hope and confidence for people that are wearing the crystal. Okay, so if you've got some Amazonite jewelry, the rationale goes, so you're going to feel more confident about yourself. And a lot of that is, I would imagine, because of feeling more peaceful, and creativity becomes enhanced. And also, when we talk about enhancing the communication, we're talking about honest and authentic communication. And when we can be honest and open with people and trust the process of life, then obviously we are going to be more confident with outcomes. And so therefore, it is a good crystal for the purposes of manifestation. It helps to expand this loving outlook of life and appreciation and gratitude, as well as toward your own life, what's going on for you right now. Now, I just want to clarify here that I am not a geologist, but I think this kind of information is important to establish if we're buying online, more so than any other time, is whether or not we're buying an authentic piece of crystal. If the retailer is credible, it helps to be able to identify what is genuine from the fabricated or nonsensical, shall we say. So when it comes to Amazonite, this is actually an image of Amazonite as it's found. It is basically mined on the surface layers of the earth through open mining. Now, the other thing too, that it's really important to know this stuff when it comes to care of your crystals, is whether or not the crystal is hard. So from that moss is the mineral hardness scale or whatever. It's got a 6 to a 6.5 out of 10, I think, is the top one. And so therefore, it's not a soft crystal, but it's not super hard. We're going to talk about some of the problems that you need to be mindful of when you own Amazonite. We'll talk about that in one of the next slides. But you can see on the outside of this lump of Amazonite here that it's actually brown on the outside because it's formed within granite. The interesting bit, because this is where people... I'm trying to think of a tactful way to say this, where people are repeating misinformation and untruths, potentially because they've gone to the same source. But one of the big myths that is out there about Amazonite is that it is actually found in the Amazon, and this is where it's got its name from. Well, I don't think there's anybody knows where it got its name from, to be honest, because it's not found in the Amazon. And with my little research for this video, there are deposits that are known of in the United States, Afghanistan, Australia, one of them. I haven't found any, bit disappointing. Brazil, Canada, China, Ethiopia, Madagascar, Namibia, Norway, Poland, Russia, and Sweden. There you go. But not the Amazon. Just a little buyer's tip here before I move on to the next slide. Amazonite has what's referred to as varying levels of opacity, and that's kind of what we were looking at with those specimens on the first slide, where one of them looked to be a lot more granular, that one that was on the right. You can flick back if you want, whereas the other one didn't. And so that is where you're talking about variations of opacity. I don't think either of those ones are good examples of transparency. There's no transparency. I've never seen Amazonite where it's glassy looking. But, obviously some will look a little bit more rocky when you handle them, if you like, and depending on where they've been sourced than the other ones. But the buyer's tip basically is expect imperfections, because Amazonite, it's how would you explain it? It's always going to have a certain amount of flaws to it, even if it's perfect. Like I said to you with that first slide that we looked at on the left, I have never seen Amazonite like that. That would be perfect. That must be so rare to actually get a piece like that. I bet the person that found it was just over the moon. But the other thing that I would recommend to you is that you actually Google the images yourself of any of the crystals that I put up. Become informed about what a crystal should look like, what a high grade crystal looks like, and what perhaps a third grade crystal looks like, because then you're going to be able to know if you're paying a fair price for a crystal as well. But I would also recommend that you not, when you're trying to educate yourself, that you not go and visit the websites that are doing the retail. Go and visit the geology sites. There's plenty of them around that have the specimens. Usually they have the higher grade, but you will be able to see the variations between lower grade and higher grade, which will actually inform your eye, so that when you look at the actual perhaps tumbled stones, you'll be able to tell the difference. But I've got a few images here to help you out with Amazonite. So if you look at these images, you can really see the variety, the variations that I was talking about. You can see imperfections here, what you might perceive to be imperfections, but are actually perfect imperfections. Okay, this first crystal, let's talk about the cluster in the middle, because that is absolutely stunning. Yes, it's not like the bit that was found in the soil before on the previous slide. It's got white. Gee, I wish I knew the word for this. I might have to educate myself a bit better before the next video. We'll call it the crusty bits, okay? Where the previous image had the granity brown type crusty bits, this one's crusty bits are lighter, but you can see it's still a perfect specimen. It also has very pale blue hues. Now, this is another tip for you when you're actually looking online to buy crystals is, quite often if they're selling crystals online, they can actually color adjust the images, so they can make them look bluer or greener or whatever. So you're never really going to know the actual shade of the crystal that you're purchasing. And with these images, I've just not adjusted them at all. But you can still see that there's variations here, and we'll just go by these must be the true to image and not enhanced color wise, because to me they're all representative of types of Amazonite that I've actually handled personally and seen along these shades. Now, okay, so I've pointed out here that the central cluster is a really perfect one. It's perfectly formed, but let's look at the hues and the shades of Amazonite that you can actually expect when you're buying. So I'll start with the image that's on the top left. Furthest to the left, we have what is called the raw ore. This is unpolished, it's unrefined, it's in its natural shape, and presumably when it was taken out the ground, it actually broke off another bit, but it's got this stunning colour, it's got this stunning texture to it, and it has got these white striations running through it, but you can still see this beautiful blue that is there. That's the bulk of the colour. But right next to that, we actually have a very similar crystal that is raw and unpolished, and you can see that one has got more green in it, and that is still potentially, as I said, we're looking at photographs here, that is still potentially a perfect legitimate specimen, because Amazonite will come in the blues or the blue-green, and it is very common actually to see that shade of Amazonite with the V, you may as well say with the V white striation in it. But let's go back now and take a look at the tumbled on the left-hand side. of the big central cluster. And those, of course, are tumbled stones. They've been polished. They've got a multitude of different colorings. You can see that there is some granite attached to these tumbles, and they are actually, I probably should have numbered these. I'll do that for the next video to be very much clearer so that you don't get confused. But where I'm going with it is I actually don't think that's particularly high grade Amazonite. It's certainly very pretty and I would be very happy to have it. But the reason why I say I don't think it's high grade is because it appears to have a lot of brown in it. And that brown is obviously the granity, crusty outer shell of the rock, the ore body, the raw ore of the Amazonite. It's still very pretty. Now, I would hazard a guess. We're going to talk about this in a moment, but for me, I would still purchase this kind of stuff because I don't think you can get a bad crystal. Okay, that's just my viewpoint. That one there, I would say, would be very suited for people that have got issues with their bones or their teeth. All right, that would be the type of crystal I would recommend people use. Then when you go to the photo, we'll continue with the tumbles. Central top tumble where you've got some more rounded stones there and you've got some bright blues in the middle of it. Look, if I was to be grading this, I'd probably say that's a grade 2, maybe, grade 2 tumble. If I was doing the grading, that would be a grade 2 tumble. And that's because we still have lots of the granite going in and out, just not as badly as the other one with all the white in it. Also, I'm drawn to the blues and the greens, okay? I love those. So once again, I would still purchase that. I just would not want to be paying huge prices for it. When we talk about the tumbles again on the right-hand side, down by where I've got the little orange fairy, that one I would probably say is the lowest grade Amazonite that we've got on this image, simply because of the big chunks of brown and granite that is through it. But as I say, once again, it's still a perfectly good crystal. It's perfectly good for use. You just would not want to pay too much for it. Now, I'm going to talk about that other interesting looking, they're uncut, unpolished, top right-hand side. You can see it's got the crusty granite around it, and it's definitely the browny granite. Now, some people find that kind of crystal ugly. For me, I actually really like that kind of crystal because it's raw. I appreciate polished. I appreciate carved crystals as well. As I say, I love them all. But I also love a specimen. Perhaps not a sliced one like that because they're obviously been sliced. But that's a very interesting shape, actually. And what I find interesting about that particular specimen is you've got one side of it is more blue than the other side. One side is green, one side is blue. Fascinating. But anyway, let me know your thoughts. Do you have a favourite one? What would be your preference if you were able to get your hands on any? So now that we've had a look and we've informed ourselves a little bit more about the crystal and how to pick one as far as what it looks like goes, now let's talk about the metaphysical properties, all right? So when we talk about metaphysical properties, crystals are said to, and of course I believe this because otherwise I wouldn't be doing this stuff, but they carry metaphysical benefits, and the benefits obviously can be spiritual, energetic, they can be emotional, psychological, and we also attribute physical healing properties toward crystals. But I'm going to go through them one by one. So to start with, when we talk about the spiritual metaphysical benefits of Amazonite, there is this capacity where it helps a person to open to receive the divine universal love, which many of us will block. Other attributes include the alignment of the spiritual bodies. Now, if you look at images of the aura and that kind of stuff, you usually see that the physical body is referred to as the most dense, and then you've got the auric layers around it, which could be the astral, the emotional, the etheric. I'm not going to go through them all. I've got other videos that talk about that. But Amazonite is said to help to align those bodies so that you can experience greater health. It's also attributed to be balance out our masculine and feminine aspects, the yin and yang of who we are. Then we've talked about divine universal love, but we've also got the business of being able to open up our heart chakra. So it's said to activate that so that we're better able to give and receive love. Now, there's an affirmation that would actually go with that, which would be along the lines of I am loved, loving, and lovable. Okay, so it's kind of cementing that belief within our own selves. As I said, communication and personal expression is enhanced. What might be interesting, and it's okay, I don't mind if you say Anna needs to be using some Amazonite when she makes these videos. I might actually consider doing that. I'll go and I'll have a ferret later on and see if I can find a piece, and then I'll charge it. But anyway, other benefits of Amazonite from a metaphysical perspective is that it's said to help assist with the ease of transition. So if you knew somebody that was in a hospital with a terminal illness, you would perhaps put some Amazonite in their hospital room, or if they're at home, I can't remember the terminology for that, where they're at home until they pass. You could put some beside their bed or whatever, just to help them feel more peaceful as they make that change, the final steps of their journey. Now, another benefit of it, which I love the idea of this, is for those people that are trying to develop the sacred breath. You know, this is the, or if they've got lung conditions actually, but let's not talk about that now. I'm getting ahead of myself. From a metaphysical perspective, if you're trying to learn breath control as part of enhancing your capacity to attune to the higher vibration, shall we say, that draws upon the sacred breath. And this is the capacity to be able to breathe in. It's also called a circular breath, where you can breathe in to the count of 7. That's what we aim for. Hold it for the count of 7 and then release over the count of 7. Now, that all takes training. That is a real mastery. Not many people can actually do it to that level. And I'll put my hand up and say, yeah, look, 3 to 5. If you can do 3 to 5, don't beat yourself up. But if you were looking to actually expand that, then you could hold Amazonite while you're meditating and doing your sacred breath exercises. So when we talk about the physical attributes, you know, of course, it's all metaphysical, of Amazonite, you can see there's a real range here, particularly though, beyond the those spiritual attributes that I've mentioned, the bones, the skeleton, anything to do with calcium deposits, if people have got problems actually storing calcium and stuff like that, if they've got problems with their teeth and tooth decay, then Amazonite is said to be really good for that. Now, when I talk about that, I'd be interested in people's experiences, okay, because this is what I look forward to, people coming back and saying to me, well, actually, I used it and I found X, Y, and Z. And that could be, well, it didn't work for me. It could be, it did work for me, okay, because this is all part of the learning. I know of another crystal that I actually recommend for bone, skeleton, and calcium. And I know a couple of techniques to use with different crystals for these specific things, but I haven't actually tried Amazonite for this. And this is why I say, look, there's a lot of crystals out there and I haven't tried all of them for every little thing. I only share information and then I wait for the feedback. When it comes to impotence and sexual dysfunction, clearly I'm a woman, so, well, I hope you can tell, I believe I've got a deep voice. So that's not something I actually am familiar with. So I can't even imagine a guy sharing his experiences of that. It's also believed anyway to assist with stutter and speech if people have got speech problems or impediments. When it comes to earache and hearing problems, it's supposed to assist there. As I mentioned before, it's, you know, when we talk about the sacred breath, we're also referring to just the capacity to breathe in general. So if people have got lung or asthma conditions or breathlessness problems, then they might benefit from holding, wearing some Amazonite. It's also said to assist with the hair and skin health, and also to help with the endocrine system and the metabolism. Now, I can tell you that actually, as I read this out to you and all my little notes, in fact, for the last week when I've been working on this video, I've been thinking I know that I have got an amazing piece of Amazonite somewhere. I've just got to find it, charge it, and get on with it, because I think that I could benefit with this. So when it comes to the emotional and psychological benefits of Amazonite, of course, there's a heap of them too, because it is actually a very powerful crystal, very powerful. So it's certainly, if people are struggling with things like nerves and nervous tension, anxiety, if they're struggling as far as solving problems and problems within relationship boundaries, and even the giving and receiving of love, like we talked about before, well, a lot of those are basically barriers that we carry within our belief system. So Amazonite is really good for healing those kind of issues. I'm just going to read out my notes, okay? So if you hear some stopping and stalling, I've got a lot of notes here, particularly about how Amazonite can actually help to help a person, that's struggling with different things. So if you've got a bit of a victim attitude and a belief that you're always at the pointy end of life, shall we say, with tendencies to self-sabotage, then you would also benefit from Amazonite, whether you self-sabotage or not. And the other thing is too, feeling like a victim doesn't mean that you weren't a victim. Okay, sometimes people genuinely have been the victim of bad stuff through life, or at the pointy end of life, but holding on to that pain and that victim stuff actually prevents and blocks a person from moving into the positive aspects of life, starting a new beginning. So whether you've been a victim or not, even if you just believe you are, grab yourself a piece of Amazonite. It's also said to activate your creativity. If you've struggled to be able to direct some of your anger, passion, pain into positive pursuits, then Amazonite is said to actually help you step into this. If you've had gambling or addiction problems, it's also apparently supportive of overcoming those. What else? Just to be able to express and communicate in loving ways. And when we can do that, then we definitely do build confidence with ourselves, and we certainly are better able to communicate with others to resolve some of the problems that we're having, and that will certainly calm any nerves and worries that we've got. Okay, moving on. Because this is the first video of the series that I'm doing, I'm jumping around actually as I record it, because I kind of have a plan, and then when you're actually doing the plan and doing the video, then you realize that actually you might rearrange the order of things, and this is what I'm doing today. I've decided at this point that I'm going to talk about the chakras. Sorry, as I rub my eyes, because Amazonite, this is just a little bit more information for you, and why it's got the metaphysical attributes that it does, and why it's got so many of them, is that it is actually suited towards the heart and the throat. However, while it is we would call it a heart and throat crystal, it also encompasses the crown and your base chakra, because it draws in at a very deep level. So if you're talking about overcoming fears and releasing worry, that is all down in the base chakra and in the sacral chakra, if I can speak. So it's a matter of kind of healing all of this. So I would say it's more of an all-rounder. It's not just the throat and the brow and the heart. It's all of them, actually. And the other thing that's worth knowing too is when we talk about mood swings and mood disorders and this kind of stuff, if people have got depression, they actually may not be aware that from a chakra perspective, depression sits in the orange chakra, which is your sacral, and this is why I've got this little graphic up as it is, feeling safe. Okay, so they worry, they're depressed. A lot of the time, this is about resistance to change. Okay, stuff has happened that they're not happy with, and they probably wish that it hadn't, but then they're not communicating effectively as well. So depression sits in both the orange and the throat chakra. When it comes to anxiety, this is my belief, trauma sits in the higher heart chakra. And you'll notice that if people have got really extreme anxiety type disorders and they get panic attacks, they feel it in the higher heart chakra as a physiological sensation. What might I put here? That you can use, because of these connections, you can use Amazonite comfortably with other crystals. So let's say you were working with depression or even fear. You could use your Amazonite perhaps with carnelian as part of overcoming anger or as part of opening up your creativity. But if you've got some real fears or attempting to overcome gambling or addiction type issues, you could then use chakras crystals that are dedicated to the base chakra with your Amazonite. And I would actually recommend, if you don't mind me making a recommendation, I actually love Tibetan Tektite for helping people to maintain healthy boundaries. And if a person's got really low self-esteem and lacks self-confidence and self-acceptance, you could actually use the Amazonite with the rose quartz comfortably. So I'm going to try and speed this up a little bit because it's getting long. So I'll just rush through. These are some uses for Amazonite. Now, the thing to take into account is if you're going to have jewelry made from Amazonite, you need to be careful with it, okay? And that includes even if you've got a tumble stone and you're wearing it in one of those net type crystal necklace holder things that they have these days, it's actually quite fragile. It might be hard, but if it drops and hits the ground, it can actually shatter or split very easily. And this is because of all that white striation that I call a striation. It's actually called cross-hatching. And when I was doing my research, I saw that jewelry makers generally try and make sure that they cut, as you can see in these earrings here, all those white lines are going in the one direction. They try and avoid the cross-hatching because it's more likely to splinter and shatter if it's cross-hatched. The other thing is too, when it comes to jewelry made of Amazonite, is they don't recommend it for use as bracelets because, of course, bracelets and rings tend to come into contact with other things that are harder than it, and the jewelry may break. So a safer jewelry option is actually if it's a pendant or if it's a pair of earrings. Definitely be careful if you're going to put a tumble in your bra, if you're one of those people. Many of us are, because if you forget that you've got it in there and you take your bra off, then the crystal may actually fall on the bathroom floor and break. The other thing worthy of a quick mention is if you are into making elixirs from crystals, my information currently is that there is nothing to be a contraindication, shall we say. There's nothing unsafe about using Amazonite for an elixir. But once again, I would recommend that people check these things out on a regular basis because science is always changing and maybe they'll find out that something that's inside of it is a carcinogenic or whatever, and you just don't know if you don't do your checks. The perfect Amazonite, I believe, is actually a palm stone. And that way you can fit it in your hand, you can put it in your pocket. It can even be like a worry thing. You know how, I think, is it the Greek men that have what's called the worry beads? You could be holding Amazonite when you're feeling stressed at work or whatever, and nobody's going to know the difference. You could put a piece under your pillow to enhance your sleeping at night, things like that. So I've put a couple of affirmations here, as always, to give people a bit of an idea about what they can do for themselves should they choose to meditate or just attend self-healing with the crystal. Whatever you're trying to manifest, whether it's health, spiritual growth, emotional balance, the idea is that you remind your entire being that you're open to receive it, and you always follow an affirmation with gratitude. Thanks be. Okay. And I would say, just an extra tip here, the best form of affirmation, in my experience, is it starts with an I am and it finishes with an I am, such as the first one that I've got at the top there, which is, I am open to the giving and receiving of unconditional and divine love. I am. And then you take a pause, right? And an affirmation like that, you might actually repeat it over and over again, a little bit like a mantra. But anyway, there's a few suggestions there. If you've got other ideas or thoughts or whatever, please do consider putting them up below, because, somebody will appreciate it. I'll appreciate it. So when we talk about crystal care, it's not just about dropping them. It's also about how we charge them, how we keep them fresh and feeling ready for work, I guess. Now, I saw a lot of tips where people are saying things like, put your Amazonite out in the morning sun for 6 hours. Almost choked. It might just be because I live in Australia, and I keep reading people saying that Australia, we've got harsher sun. Like, really? I mean, the sun's in the sky. I don't know about that. But as an Australian and somebody who has experienced this on more than one occasion, you have to be very careful when you expose your coloured crystals to the sun, because the sun fades them. And this will also happen at Amazonite. If you leave that out in the sun all the time, it's going to actually gradually become probably a horrible colour, grey colour, My suggestion would be, certainly for Australians, that if you really insist and feel that you must put it out in the sun, then perhaps try for ambient sunlight or filtered sunlight, and for a limited exposure, not for 6 hours. I've got a perfect place out in the backyard. I've got a grapevine and a table underneath it. That would work for me. But I wouldn't be putting them out in the sun. What I would be doing is perhaps potentially putting it out under a full moon. I might hang them or place it on the earth, out where it can be rained on, because Amazonite actually is suitable for water. You can do water immersion, but I wouldn't, put it in a tub for 2 weeks or something like that. I would be inclined to just put it under running water, especially to get the dust off, because all crystals will gather dust from time to time. But another good option is selenite. Although if you have a palm stone or something like that, just remember that tip with the, is it moss? I must actually look how you pronounce that. With the scale of hardness, we'll just call it, that you do have to be careful if you're putting it on a harder crystal. Now, selenite is considered to be a very hard crystal. It's a little bit scratchy, but I still have used it with Amazonite with no problems. Okay. And when I say it's a bit scratchy selenite, that's if you've got the logs that haven't been polished, which that's me. I don't think that I would be putting Amazonite into an amethyst cave, because depending on the size of the Amazonite, I'd be worried about the amethyst points, okay? So they're just some thoughts. If you've tried any things or you've got some tips, once again, I invite you to share how you might cleanse and charge your Amazonite. So, my friends, with that, I would like to say thank you for being part of my journey. The video's a lot longer than I thought it would be. My apologies. I waffle on. I look forward to seeing your comments, and in the meantime, I shall catch you on the next video. Take care. Have a blessed day, blessed week. See you soon. Bye-bye for now.